S-a discutat mult anul acesta despre situația românilor care merg la muncă în Germania, sezonier sau cu contracte pe termen mai lung. Numărul mare de infectări cu virusul corona din rândul lor a readus în atenția publică un subiect mai vechi, condițiile în care acești oameni sunt nevoiți să muncească și să locuiască. Cele două state au început deja să ia măsuri pentru schimbarea acestei situații care nu prea respectă demnitatea umană. Vorbim despre modificările legislației muncii, dar și alte subiecte cu Gunther Krichbaum, membru al Bundestagului și un bun cunoscător al României. Sunt Cristina Cileacu. Începe Pașaport diplomatic. Gunther Krichbaum, member of Bundestag, welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Angela Merkel își încheie mandatul de cancelar al Germaniei în octombrie anul viitor. Vorbim despre unul dintre cei mai respectați lideri din Europa, poate chiar cel mai respectat deopotrivă de politicieni, dar și de oameni obișnuiți. Popularitatea ei este în creștere continuă pentru că inspiră multă încredere și arată că poate face față cu succes oricărui tip de criză. Merkel este un lider cu o prezență discretă care strălucește prin rezultatele pe care le obține. Indiferent cine îi va urma în funcție, va avea de atins o ștachetă foarte ridicată.
The leadership of Germany, since you are in the Bundestag for such a long time, Angela Merkel's term will end next year and somebody else will become the next chancellor of Germany. But how will Germany look after losing such a powerful and well-respected leader?
Well, without any doubt, Angela Merkel is not only estimated in Germany, she is also estimated in the whole of Europe, but also perhaps in the world. And we will miss her without any doubt. But on the other hand, I think also that the Christian Democratic Party has enough talents. So whoever will follow Angela Merkel, but he or she has his own style, and probably it will be a he, because it depends also who will follow in the party. So that will be decided in December on our party congress, and at the moment I think it's an open game.
Sutele de infectări COVID-19 în rândul românilor care munceau în Germania au atras atenția presei și a autorităților din cele două state. Situația a repus în discuție un subiect mai vechi și bine cunoscut: abuzurile pe care muncitorii sunt nevoiți să le suporte din partea celor pentru care lucrează. Demnitatea umană este importantă indiferent de tipul muncii, iar angajatorii trebuie să le acorde oamenilor și respect, nu doar salariu.
With the occasion of the pandemic, we rediscover, because the problem is quite old and well known, the topic of the seasonal workers and their work condition. What is Germany changing in this direction? Because, as I said, the problem only was shown by the pandemic condition, but is there for many, many years before.
It's a problem with different sides, or in the minimum two sides of one coin. First remark that concerns the work contracts. That means this is regulated, or not already regulated, but already was done, the decision in the government at the end of July to abolish all the work contracts in the meat producing branch and meat producing industry. Now it will be in September discussed in the Parliament, in the commissions and the concerned commissions like social and labor affairs and so on, and finally it will become a law. Difficulties, also to mention them. Is it possible to regulate only one branch and to abolish the work contracts there? Is it possible and to allow it in another sense, in another branch? Or is the meat producing companies and meat producing industry then in a position that they say, well, if it concerns only our part of industry and not others, then we feel not equal treated, and this could violate constitutional law. So there are difficulties which have to be discussed now in the Parliament, in hearings and so on. The second point is the real disadvantage, the real problems, if you want, are not so far in the labor conditions in the companies, because there the hygienic conditions are fulfilled and so on. It's a tough work, but anyway, these conditions are fulfilled and controlled. The other point and the real problem is the accommodation, the housing of the workers. And now another problem, also if you want, influenced by our constitution, is it possible that an employer gives an instruction to his employees how they have to rent an apartment, how they have to live, because that's privacy, that's total privacy. To give you one example, Mercedes cannot give an order to his workers or to his employees that they have to rent an apartment with a certain size, in a certain area, and so on. This cannot work because it's privacy and their private right. Here, to be very honest, we have to protect these kind of labors coming from Poland, Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria. We have to protect them by themselves. What I mean, they have an interest to transfer a lot of money, the most possible amount which is, goes to their country. And this means, in this case, they are satisfied to live in an apartment with 6, 8 other persons. So we as a state, we have also the duty, I think, to regulate it, that this cannot happen. But it is not so easy, because we cannot give the permission to students to live in an apartment with 6 persons, and on the other hand to say, well, to those people who are coming for a labor here, there it is forbidden. So these are difficulties, but on the other hand, I think the direction of the government is the right one. Why? The core economic factor of a company has to be done by direct employed people for the company. That's our social model. And the work contracts, what I mentioned, is an instrument for more flexibility. So, but if, especially in the meat producing companies, if 90% use only this flexibility instrument, this cannot happen. That's now the point where we have to regulate it. We regulated it also in the past, but it has to be regulated much more stricter than it was in the past. And there, I think the problem is recognized, and we have two interests: fair labor conditions on the one hand, and on the other hand, that the people have an accommodation, have a housing which is also convenient to our standards. And this is now this subject which will be solved.
And regarding the people working in the farms?
Regarding people working on the farms, they have another type of working contract because they are really seasonal workers. They are coming only for a few months to Germany, especially in harvest time. It does not matter if it is vegetables or the wines or in the wineries or something else. There we have the same problem, that we have to solve the conditions for the housing. So that means we have to guarantee that a minimum figure of square meters has to be guaranteed, and so on. This has to be defined. Also other laws which are in this case also influencing this matter, but here I think very soon a solution can be found.
Pandemia de coronavirus a provocat tot felul de efecte. În cazul politicii a arătat clar care împărat nu are haine. Populiștii, care sunt foarte buni la făcut promisiuni fără acoperire, nu au făcut față unei crize reale și au fost sancționați de cetățeni. Se va menține însă tendința și după ce lucrurile se stabilizează?
If we talk about leadership and we look towards the rest of the world, we see that the population of our days is having this tendency of choosing, let's say, populists, glamorous leaders, and less more prepared leaders. What do you think makes the people of today choosing this type of personalities and not real leaders?
Well, it depends sometimes also from the time. That means people want that their problems will be solved. And people expect also from us as policymakers and from us as politicians that we recognize their problems and solve it also. Nowadays, I think there's also a lot of frustration on the one hand, but also that people feel insecure. Look now, in pandemic times, people are not sure if they can remain their jobs or not. That's a feeling of insecureness. And so hopefully that it is possible now to stabilize our economy, not only in Germany, because we need Europe, and for the whole Europe it is necessary to stabilize the markets. In a globalized world with a lot of challenges, and there I think we have to give the right answers, we have to give orientation to the people, and then also if the people have the feeling that we are able to solve their problems, that we recognize their problems, then they will also follow established parties and not throw away their road to parties which cannot solve any problem, like populist parties. But here, looking on Romania, till today, and fortunately, populist party does not play a role like in Italy, like in France, or also in the case of Germany, when I look on the AfD, but the percentage is a very low one and is also decreasing.
So do you think, with your experience as a politician, as a German politician, do you think that after the pandemic will be over, or let's say stabilized, people will choose differently because their problems maybe are not so well handled, if we look what happens in the crisis of pandemic?
I think at the moment it's difficult to predict it, because we will be engaged to solve our problems, to stabilize the economy, and to avoid that the unemployment rate will increase. That's our task, and there we are very, very carefully, but also very decisive. Look on the decision when we had now the negotiations with the mutual financial framework, but also with the recovery fund, because with the recovery fund we are now able here, after the negotiations with the European Parliament, to give the money in the European markets, in the European countries. Hopefully that now in September we can solve the negotiation or finalize the negotiations with the European Parliament. So I'm optimistic, and it was very, very useful and very, very important to get a basic, together with a French-German proposal. Now we have the basic, or more, we have the conclusion and the compromise between our European partners. Hopefully that now can money flow to the European countries.
Mai țineți minte negocierile dure pe care liderii europeni le-au purtat între ei la sfârșitul lunii iulie pentru bugetul pe următorii 7 ani și fondul de relansare economică? Ei bine, dacă atunci s-a stabilit cadrul larg, acum Parlamentul European are de aprobat ceea ce s-a negociat în vară. Este nevoie și de acest pas pentru a fi sigur că banii europeni se acordă după criterii clare statelor membre și vor fi folosiți pentru proiecte cu viitor.
Since you mentioned the budget negotiations, and we all saw them back then, that there were tough negotiations. When it comes to countries to get those money, everybody needs to make some projects, of course. But what is the best way to do this project, since we had the pandemic? Everybody for itself, or maybe some of those projects should be done together as a whole of countries?
I think first these projects have to be developed, and if there are cross-border projects, the European Commission and the European partners will not be against it, sure not. But the most important fact will be, is there an added value? Is there a benefit for the country, but also for Europe? Look on our targets that we have in the European Union. This money in the recovery fund is connected with the expectance that we will have also impulses for new technologies, for digitalization, for artificial intelligence. To give you only one example, the next field, the next example, fight against climate change, so renewable energies. So a lot can be done, and I think this is done in this case not only to fight against the crisis, but also to open the door in the future for our next generation.
Cum se transformă o țară? În timp. Iar ca să arăți lumii că ai evoluat, este nevoie să știi să te prezinți mai bine și mai la timpul prezent. Potențialul României este vizibil pentru străini și greu de intuit pentru mulți români sătui de tot felul de probleme zilnice. Dar o privire din exterior este necesară ca să înțelegem mai bine situația în care suntem de fapt.
I hear a lot about my country's potential, but it's quite difficult living inside the country to see it. Since you know Romania quite well and you travel in Romania quite often, what can you tell me in more details when it comes to how Germany and Romania works in the economic areas?
Well, I think first remark, you're right, I observed the country since almost 20 years. And if you are living in Romania, you are living in the film. So I'm coming from time to Romania and I get the photos. Sometimes it's not bad to see the photos because when I look back 10, 15, 20 years ago, and lay the photos, each photo beside the other one, then you recognize the contrast. And so there I can only confirm that a lot developed in the country. Now with this perspective for another 10, 15, 20 years, I have the perspective and the optimism that things will move in the right direction. Sure, people are sometimes not very patient. That's the same case in Germany, and that's right.
It's human nature,
this
after
will
all.
push the political powers to move in the right direction. But anyway, a lot happened till today. Now to the Romanian-German cooperation and relation. I think our cooperation is a very excellent one. It's really an excellent one. A lot of companies, German companies, I don't want to mention it publicly now in the TV, but a lot of German companies, thousands of companies, invested here because people are very busy, they are engaged, they are trustful, and so it's a good market to be invested. I think also in other areas it can be done more. Take touristic sector, for example. That's my personal view, think not only the Black Sea coast is worthwhile to be visited. I think the beauty is inside the country, but each person has to consider it itself, because I think it is necessary to travel in the country, because that's also my experience. When I talk about Romania, there are a lot of prejudges in the discussion, and then convincing is always to travel in the country, to see the beauty of the country, and to know more about the country, and especially to know more about the Romanians themselves. So the potential is a high one, also for the further cooperation. And look here, all the companies, even in the crisis, they stayed and they stay here in Romania, and that's also a very, very clear confession in the power of the country.
You know Romania well, as you said, but what is Romania to Germany for the rest of the Germans and for the German politicians?
For the German politicians, first remark, Romania is a very reliable partner, and Romania has its importance also for geostrategical reasons. Look, it's situated at the Black Sea coast. We have Crimea Island violated, occupied by the Russians against international law, to be very clear, and sure that all the countries at the Black Sea coast feels threatened by a country which is violating international law. I think it should be the message in the understood message in the 21st century that international borders have to be respected. When we make it as a, let me say, as a concept of politics to violate international borders, then we are immediately back in the first half of the last century with all the consequences. So that's a first remark. Reliable partner, with a clear confession also to NATO and the European Union, reliable in the European Union, and a huge part of the population, of the Romanian population, is convinced that the membership in the European Union brings more advantages than disadvantages. That's first remark. Romanian, now in the side of Germany, I wish that more German would come to the country and see it. Because till today, that's my impression, Romania is too unknown for a lot of Germans. And also when I visit schools and classes, because then I talk about Europe, I discuss with the students, then I say them, well, when you are planning the next travel for your class, for your school, don't go, well, it's worthwhile to visit France, it's worthwhile to visit Spain, it's worthwhile to visit Italy. But visit also Poland, visit Bulgaria and visit Romania. Because also for our young people it's necessary that Europe is not only the western part of this country. It is also the next and the very close half of on the next side of our continent. And this is very important to emphasize it each time, and so hopefully things will move in the right direction.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe contul nostru de Twitter. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la 11:30 și în reluare sâmbătă de la 22:30. La revedere!